Welcome to Creepy Vibes. Tonight we're venturing deep into the heart of Texas, where the land is as vast as its legends, and just as terrifying. From eerie lights haunting dark rivers to ancient forces that never should have been disturbed, get ready for 5 of the most disturbing true Texas horror stories that will make you question what's real and what's lurking just beyond the horizon. But before we begin, here's something strange. Most viewers make one huge mistake. They leave without subscribing, and by doing so, they miss out on the creepiest, spine-tingling tales that only the bravest dare to hear. Don't be one of them. Hit that subscribe button now, because tonight's just the beginning, and the terror waiting in the darkness is far from over. So, where are you watching from, and what time is it there? Let me know in the comments, because here, the night is only getting started, and the horror is waiting to unfold. Now let's dive into the darkness. Lost Creek, Texas was the sort of place that never made the papers, unless it was the police blotter or the obits. Tucked deep into the scrub country, where the Guadalupe River wound through limestone cliffs and fat-bodied cottonwoods, it wasn't much more than a forgotten bend in the road. A town with more ghosts than people, some said. And they weren't just talking metaphor. Folks who grew up around there knew better than to go down near the old river bend after dark. Even the bravest deer hunters and beer-soaked teenagers steered clear. It wasn't the snakes or the sinkholes that worried them, not really. It was the stones. Down past an old deer path, half swallowed by Spanish moss and cypress knees, sat a ring of squat lichen-covered stones. Big things taller than a man and wide as a refrigerator. They leaned together like ancient drunks, shoulder to shoulder, forming a crooked, imperfect circle. Most of them were submerged halfway in the river's black water, as if the earth itself was trying to drown them. And maybe it was. No one knew who put them there. The Comanche said they were already ancient when their grandfathers came. Settlers stayed away. Even the Corps of Engineers, when they dammed the river upstream in the 50s, left the circle untouched, claimed it was geologically unstable. But the locals, well, they just said it hummed. That's how Dr. Nathaniel Rhodes came into the picture. 33 years old, straight from Rice University, Rhodes was the kind of academic who never quite fit into the tight-collared world of lectures and peer-reviewed journals. He had a wild edge to him, the kind you only found in guys who'd spent too many nights reading Lovecraft under dim lamplight and drinking too much coffee. He wore the same green army jacket every day, even in summer, and spoke in long, looping sentences that always ended on a question. He came to Lost Creek in the spring of '99, riding a grant from some obscure historical society, and dragging with him a crew of young archaeologists, techs, and one bored grad student named Elise, who spent more time smoking weed than cataloging pottery shards. They pitched camp near the stone circle and set up a perimeter with drones, sonar, and infrared scanners, none of which worked for more than a day. Batteries drained overnight, cameras jammed, laptops fried. At first, they blamed the river's humidity. By the 3rd day, they weren't so sure. That's when Rhodes found the carvings. They were barely visible unless the light hit the stones. Just right, fine, spiraling grooves that moved like shadows on the surface. At first, they looked like writing, ancient pictographs maybe. Elise thought they resembled Aztec glyphs, but Rhodes shook his head. Older, he said. Much older. The problem was, you couldn't look at them for long. Your eyes started to water. Your head ached. Elise said the lines would squirm if you stared too hard, like worms under your skin. Rhodes didn't listen. He spent hours with them, tracing every groove with trembling fingers, mumbling to himself. He stopped eating, stopped sleeping. His notebook filled with numbers, impossible equations, nonsensical symbols, sometimes entire pages blacked out with furious ink. Then the dream started. Elise heard him crying at night, heard him whispering names that weren't in any language she recognized. He started drawing things, awful things. Cities with spires like bone, walls made of screaming faces, towers twisting down into the ocean floor. Always the sea. Always something moving down there, watching, waiting. By the 8th day, Rhodes was gone. No sign of struggle, No footprints, no note, no scream. Just an open tent and a single piece of paper pinned to the center pole, written in a jagged, hurried scrawl. The circle is a gateway. They searched the area for 2 days. Elise swore she heard his voice one night, echoing out over the water, calling her name in a voice that wasn't quite human. Then the river began to rise, though it hadn't rained. The stones sank deeper, into the current, pulsing with that low, bone-rattling hum. They packed up and left the next morning. Elise didn't go back to school. She vanished a year later, walked straight into the Atlantic off the coast of Maine. Witnesses said she was smiling. And the circle? Still there. Still waiting. Locals say it sings on moonless nights. They say if you stand close enough, you'll feel it breathing. And every now and then someone goes missing, usually drifters or tourists, folks who don't know better. But Lost Creek remembers. It always remembers, and the river never forgets. There's a whole other world beneath the streets of San Antonio. That's not just local color or some spooky legend to sell ghost tours and midnight margaritas on the Riverwalk. It's a fact. Ask any old-timer with the right kind of memory, and they'll tell you, what's under San Antonio is older than the city, older than Texas, and maybe older than people altogether. It starts with the caves. Not the tourist traps you find in hill country with flashing signs and gift shops full of glow-in-the-dark stalactite keychains. No, this is different. This is deeper. They don't put these caves on maps. No one cuts paths through them or installs railings. They're part of a tangled system that runs like veins through the limestone, black arteries beneath the city's skin. Some say they were used as hideouts during the Civil War. Others claim the Spanish missionaries avoided them, said they were unclean. Some even believe the Tonkawa people, long before them, would leave offerings at certain mouths to keep the things below asleep. Most people don't know about them at all. But James Holloway did. James had that kind of hunger only lonely men and madmen carry. He was a geologist by diploma, but underneath the degrees and dusty academic papers he was something else. A man who needed to know. Needed to pull back the curtain and see what was writhing underneath. They said he had no family, no attachments, no real friends, just colleagues who tolerated his long, winding lectures about pre-Cambrian tunnel complexes and geostructural anomalies. They said he'd once walked into a collapsed silver mine in Nevada for 2 days, came out with a dislocated shoulder and a smile so wide it gave his grad assistant nightmares. So it wasn't surprising when he turned up in San Antonio, holed, up in a motel off Roosevelt Avenue, spending his days at the public library combing over dusty town records and old Spanish land grants, looking for something. And one night, sometime in October, he found it. An obscure reference in an 1874 surveyor's ledger, unusual hollow formations noted near Espada Aqueduct, deep, dry, unnatural. That was all James needed. He packed his bag, a flashlight, a notebook, batteries, chalk, a climbing rope. No gun, no food, no radio. He slipped through a rusted storm grate behind a county waterworks shed and dropped into the dark, grinning like a man who's finally come home. He never came back. 3 days later, after a maintenance worker reported something humming in the sewers near Mission Espada, the city reluctantly dispatched a rescue team. They didn't go far, just far enough to find a dry cavern that shouldn't have been there, the walls smoother than any natural formation had a right to be, and James's gear laid out in a neat little row: flashlight, chalk, a snapped rope, a single hiking boot, and the notebook. The journals start sane enough: dated entries, scientific sketches, depth readings, temperature fluctuations. But as the pages go on, the writing slips, grows crooked, words half erased as if the page itself resisted being written on. October 14th, found access point near old Spanish culvert. The air smells wrong. Not like mold or damp, more like old copper. Tasted metal when I breathed deep. October 15th, walls are worked, too smooth. Saw linear cuts, symmetrical. Could be ancient tools. But the angles are wrong. Shadows don't fall like they should. I keep losing track of time. Battery drained an hour in, October 16th. Heard voices. Not English. Not any language I know. Vibrations in the stone like the rock is talking, the markings. They shimmer when I'm not looking. I think I touched one in my sleep. That line's underlined 3 times. October 17th, maybe. Tunnels keep shifting. Drew a map. Doesn't match where I came from. I turned around and the way I came was gone. Walls moved. They moved. There's a noise like breathing in the rock. I am not alone here. Then nothing but ink blots and a single phrase scribbled over and over across the final page. It is listening. The rescue crew sealed off the passage, claimed it was unstable. No press release, no official statement. Just a few men with pale faces and short answers, but word got around. Utility workers talk about hearing things when they're deep in the old drainage lines, clicking like teeth on stone. Sometimes rhythmic tapping like Morse code. One crewman quit on the spot after he looked down a maintenance shaft near the San Antonio River and said he saw eyes looking back. Not human, not animal, just there. And sometimes at night, near Mission Espada, the earth hums. A low throb you can feel in your ribs like a heartbeat or something trying to wake up. The Pecos Desert doesn't care about you. It doesn't care about your cell service or your engine light, your fancy cooler full of craft beer, or even your name. It's a hard, lonely stretch of sand and sky, where the sun beats down like a hammer during the day and the wind howls like it's trying to remember your voice at night. And then, there's the train. You ask the folks in the dust-bitten town of Dry Mercy, population 183 on a good day, and they'll tell you. Not eagerly, not freely, but they'll tell you if you're polite and persistent and you buy them something strong enough to drown memory. They'll talk about the ghost locomotive, a sound that doesn't belong in the 21st century, cutting through the black stillness at 3:11 a.m. sharp, not 3:10, not 3:12. That's part of what makes it so damn creepy. It's always the same time. A long, keening whistle that rises up from nowhere like a banshee drunk on smoke and steel. They say it echoes off the cliffs and dry arroyos like it's got somewhere to be. Only problem is, there ain't no track out there anymore. Hasn't been since 1903, when the Pecos and Western Railway shut down after the last engineer, a man named Horace Greeley Trent, drove his train straight into a canyon during a dust storm, killing everyone aboard, passengers, crew, even himself. Only thing they found was a single wheel, warped and scorched like it had passed through fire. That was the end of the Pecos line. Officially, but the desert doesn't care about official endings. The man who went looking was named Dr. Ellis Markham, a historian with more curiosity than sense. He taught railroad history at a small liberal arts college back east and had a habit of laughing a little too hard at his own jokes. The kind of guy who wore tweed when it was 95 degrees out. The kind of guy who believed everything had a logical explanation, except logic doesn't get you far in the Pecos. Markham came out to Dry Mercy with a recorder, a rucksack full of books, and a folder stuffed with yellowed maps and brittle paper timetables. He asked too many questions, smiled too easily, and took notes like he was solving a murder. He set up camp where the old line used to run, about 20 miles out. Nothing but red dust and rusted rails sticking up from the earth like the ribs of something long dead. That first night nothing happened. The second night he heard it. The whistle. 11 a.m. He recorded it, though the sound, they say, didn't come out right on tape. Warbled, metallic, almost like a voice underneath the shriek, speaking in a tongue not meant for human ears. On the third night, Markham saw it, and that's when everything broke wide open. It came out of the dark with no light, no steam, just presence. A hulking, rust-covered beast of a locomotive crawling across the desert like a centipede made of iron and hate. Its wheels didn't spin, they dragged, screamed. The symbols came next, not painted, not etched, burned into the metal, spidery, sick shapes that pulsed with a green glow the color of sickness and drowned things. Markham would later call them language without language, in a note scribbled on the back of a train schedule. The train had no windows, no doors, just long, endless cars behind it, stretching into the night like the spine of some vast insect, and inside them something moved. Markham wrote that he felt it before he saw it. Dread, he called it. Not fear, dread. The sense that time was bending in the presence of this thing, that the future was already written and it didn't want us in it. That night his journal ended. The next morning his camp was empty. Bedroll, boots, recorder, all there. But no Markham. What they did find was 50 yards down the dry rail bed, a flat stone with words carved into it, clean and deep. Like a knife through butter, it is not the past. It is the future. No one goes out there anymore, not even the kids, not even the wild ones who usually can't resist dares and legends. They say the land is wrong now, like a bruise that never heals. The air's too still. The shadows move, when the wind doesn't. Some nights, if you're standing on the edge of town, you'll hear it. That long, mournful whistle, not like any modern train, no air horn, no diesel rumble. Just steam and sorrow and the promise of forever. And if you see it, God help you if you see it, you'll understand what Ellis Markham meant. Because that train isn't coming from the past. It's coming for the future. And sooner or later, we're all going to be standing on its platform. You ever been down to the Brazos at night? Not the parts tourists visit, with the lazy kayaks and sunset photos and locals grilling ribs on the shore while country music floats from battered truck radios. No, I mean downriver, past where the streetlights die, past where the road turns to gravel and the trees lean in like they know something you don't. There's a bend just outside of a ghost town called Calhoun's End, where the Brazos slows to a thick black crawl. You won't find it on any proper map, not anymore. The Corps of Engineers rerouted part of the waterway in the 1970s and covered their tracks like a dog burying something it doesn't want to dig up again. But the river remembers, and some nights, if the fog settles low and the wind comes in from the north, you can see them. They don't flicker like fireflies or drift like swamp gas. People like to say will-o'-the-wisps are just tricks of the light, marsh fumes and bad vision and the mind playing games. These ain't that. The dead lights move with intent. They hover above the water, glowing soft at first, blue mostly, pale blue like the color of old bruises or frozen lips. But if you look too long, they begin to pulse, not like a heartbeat, more like a warning, and God help you if they notice you watching. The story really starts with a man named Franklin Jessup, a retired riverboat captain who ran freight up and down the Brazos for 40 years. Jessup had the face of a bulldog and a voice like gravel poured through molasses. Folks respected him, said he knew the river better than he knew his own kids. He heard the stories, like everyone else. The old wives' tales, lights on the river, people going missing, fishermen finding their lines tangled in bones. But Franklin didn't believe in boogeymen. That changed in the summer of late '03. That's when he and 3 other captains, Lenny, Hart, Big Joe Ramirez, and a new guy called Dennis who barely looked old enough to drink, decided they'd get to the bottom of it. They outfitted Jessup's old towboat, the Delilah, with high beams, sonar, night vision cameras, everything, short of holy water. They launched from a half-rotten dock just past Calhoun's End at sundown. Only 2 of them came back. The Delilah was found at dawn, bumping lazily against the bank with no one at the wheel. The cabin door was open, the lights were off, and the radio was on a loop, broadcasting a static hiss that made the deputy who responded throw up in the grass. Jessup was gone, so was Big Joe. Lenny was found sitting in the corner of the galley, eyes open, mouth slack, rocking back and forth and whispering, "They touched my eyes. They touched my eyes." Dennis was found hiding in a storage hatch, his face cut to ribbons from clawing at the metal walls. He never spoke again, and taped to the inside of the pilot house window, written in a trembling scrawl on the back of a fuel receipt, were the words, "They were waiting in the dark. The lights haven't stopped. People still see them, mostly. Riverfolk, the kind who work late and keep their heads down. They say the orbs move in 3s now, sometimes more. Never alone. They don't just float anymore either. Sometimes if you get too close, they'll drift up, hang in the air like lanterns, and sometimes, just sometimes, you'll see things inside the glow. Shapes, faces maybe. Or worse, and always, the whispers. Not like human whispers. Too fast. Too many voices, all layered over one another like broken glass in a blender. You don't hear them with your ears, not exactly. You hear them in your bones. One girl, Abby Reynolds, 19, works at the bait shop off Highway 6, says she saw the lights hovering over a beached canoe 2 weeks ago. Said they were flickering like they were laughing. She hasn't been back to the river since, smart girl. There's talk now. Quiet talk. There's talk now. That the dead lights aren't just ghosts or tricks or something the river dreamed up after too many years of swallowing the dead. They're hungry. That they were called, maybe. Or worse, released. Some say they're not of this world at all. That they're cracks in something old. Something that presses against the skin of our reality like a bloated hand behind damp wallpaper, waiting for enough eyes to notice. Waiting to be seen. And once you see them, they see you too. So here's some advice, free of charge. If you ever find yourself near the Brazos River, and the sky's gone dark, and the air smells like ozone and copper pennies. If you see lights drifting across the water, soft and blue and patient like fishermen at dusk, don't follow them, don't watch, don't listen. And whatever you do, don't go near the bend at Calhoun's End, because the river's still watching. And the dead lights, they remember who's seen them. The Llano Estacado is one of those places where silence has weight. They call it the Caprac, flatland that stretches until your eyes quit, where there are no hills to hide behind, no trees to offer comfort, and nothing but dry mesquite scrub and faded fence posts left to keep you company. It's a place too big for people, too still. When you stand out there all alone and the wind dies, you feel it, that pressure, that presence. Ask the ranchers, the oilmen, the wind turbine techs, hell, even the truckers who only stop long enough to piss behind the nearest blue yucca. They won't say it loud, but if you buy them a beer or two in the right bar, the one with the antlers nailed to the wall and the jukebox stuck on 1979, they'll lean in and tell you, something ain't right with the sky out here. And they're not talking about storms or lightning, not tornadoes, not weather. They're talking about the hollow sky. Dale Mera wasn't the kind of man who scared easy. Grew up poor outside La Mesa, the kind of kid who learned to shoot snakes before he could spell his name. Joined the Marines, did 2 tours. In Afghanistan, came home and decided all he really wanted was a patch of dry land and enough peace and quiet to forget what he'd seen. He got the land. The peace? That's where the story changes. Dale bought 40 acres on the edge of nowhere, flat and cracked with soil dry as burnt toast. But he made it work. Solar panels, a well, a couple head of longhorns. He lived alone in a prefab double-wide, with a dog named Chief and a fridge full of Lone Star. And every night, like clockwork, he walked the northern edge of his property. Said it helped him sleep, until the night he didn't come back. When they found Dale, he wasn't quite dead yet. He was naked, face down in a gouge in the earth that looked like it had been carved with a giant's claw. His skin was burned, sun, friction, maybe something else. And he was talking, except it wasn't talking, not really. The EMT who rode with him in the ambulance said Dale kept repeating a single phrase in a voice that wasn't his, a voice that didn't match the shape of a human throat. It sees me, it sees me, it sees through. He died in surgery, blood pressure crashing as every vein in his body swelled and burst. One by one, the autopsy said, vascular failure due to extreme atmospheric pressure fluctuations. The coroner said, bullshit. There are other stories too, older ones that go back before white men ever set foot on the Llano. Comanche and Apache legends speak of the Dao Noa, or the sky that watches, a great void overhead that sometimes moves. They said you could see it in the eyes of coyotes, in the panic of jackrabbits, in the way the birds would go silent and the prairie dogs vanished underground. One tale from 1876 tells of a cavalry patrol that rode out under a full moon and never returned. Their horses were found days later, standing still and wild-eyed, shivering in the desert heat. And in the sand near their last camp, someone, or something, had drawn a spiral 20 feet across. The spiral had depth, not carved, drawn. But when you looked at it, it felt like you might fall in. They called it the Llano Hole. The newspapers dismissed it. One reporter said it was mass hysteria brought on by lightning and isolation. Except lightning doesn't whisper. In 2011, a crew of oil field workers drilling west of Levelland reported a sky ripple event. That's the term they used in court later, during the civil suit. They said it happened just before midnight. No clouds, no wind, no warning. The stars flickered like dying bulbs and the sky rippled like someone dropped a rock into a still pond. One man, Jose Ramirez, was looking up when it happened. He started screaming, clawing at his face. Said the stars had opened their mouths. He was institutionalized the following week. Spent his final years drawing circles inside circles on the padded walls of a psychiatric hospital in Abilene. Before he stopped talking entirely, he said one thing over and over. They're not stars, they're eyes. I met a woman once, Marla Skinner, former meteorologist turned UFO nut, who claimed she'd been chasing anomalies on the Llano for 20 years. Said the sky out there had depth inconsistencies. I asked what she meant. She said, on radar it behaves like a two-dimensional surface. On LiDAR it's got a third layer, something between. She showed me a video she took on her phone. A cloudless night, a perfect sky. Then, the stars shivered. Literally, like a stone had been dropped from behind them. A second later, everything stopped. Like the sky reset. You know how old folks say, a silence so deep you can hear your heartbeat? This was worse. She said, you ever hear something above the silence? I didn't answer, but I had. The last reported event was in the fall of 2023. 2 grad students from Texas Tech were camping near Caprock Canyon State Park, doing a field study on soil erosion. They never came back. Their tent was found abandoned, their phones dead, their gear untouched, except their notebook, open to a page that said, in jagged handwriting, we stood beneath it too long. The sky is not empty. It's waiting for a name. I went there, once, just once, middle of the night, no moon. I parked my truck in the middle of a fallow field, shut off the engine, and lay on the hood, staring up. The stars felt wrong, too close, too bright, like someone had peeled the ceiling off the world. And then it happened. The ripple, a slow nauseating wave across the night sky, as though the atmosphere itself had turned to jelly. And for a moment, just one breathless, godless moment, I saw something move behind the sky, something with weight, shape, thought. It saw me, and I ran. I don't remember how I got back to the truck or how I drove home. I just know that sometimes when the nights are quiet and the stars hang low, I hear that scraping sound again, like bone against sky. If you ever find yourself out on the Llano Estacado on a windless night, and the stars begin to pulse like warning lights, don't look up, don't listen, and for the love of God, don't stand still too long, because something's waiting behind that sky. And now, it knows you know, and it's hungry.